resources to adequately cover their needs. A nation's ability to defend themselves. Conditions in which people have access to natural resources needed to survive. Water. Food.
Hi, I'm going to talk to you about some examples of current cases of environmental security and in areas where it might become a potential issue. So right now, 1 in 6 people in sub-Saharan Africa do not have access to clean water. And the contaminated water is the #1 cause of diarrhea. In fact, 2.2 million people die each year from diarrhea. And it actually consumes 12% of these countries' annual budgets per year in treating diarrhea. So this is one case of where there is no environmental security. There is no infrastructure or not adequate infrastructure to properly move this water, and that is why it's becoming contaminated, most commonly with fecal matter, which is causing diarrhea. I'm going to talk about another potential case where environmental security may become an issue. For example, the Northwest Passage in Canada. The ice caps are currently melting there. It used to be just totally ice, but now ships can sail there, and it's actually a really valuable trade route. However, lots of countries are trying to ship here, but Canada views this water as its own. This is another example of how environmental changes can lead to conflicts in national security.
Hi, thanks Mary. Now let's move on to the economy. Everyone wants a strong economy, right? So why doesn't everyone want environmental security? It may be hard to see right now, but our economic security is closely tied to the environment. Amir Jinnah, a renowned economist at the University of Chicago, studied the financial costs of climate change alongside many other climate scientists and economists. They concluded that for every 1.8 rise in Fahrenheit, there'd be a 1.2% decrease in United States GDP. Currently, that'd be $222 billion lost. A majority of climate scientists predict that if we don't take action, we could see a 10-degree rise by the end of this century. That could seriously hurt our economy in a new level. That's a steep price to pay for a minuscule change in temperature. Granted, we have these numbers in front of us, but how do they connect to the environment? How can climate change really damage our economy that much? Well, let me tell you. Salam Hussein from UC Berkeley lists out some of the potential causes for economic damage. He states that simple things like increased energy bills can even hurt our economy. And we know that by looking at past weather reports that extreme droughts and storms can really affect our economy. And they're only going to get worse in the future. Since the 1980s, the frequency and severity of hurricanes in the US has been higher than we've ever seen. And these droughts and hurricanes can affect American crops and infrastructure. The agricultural sector of our economy is predicted to tank. And the overuse of resources will cause prices of necessities to rise, from food to water to materials. And increased temperatures will also cause mass migration to cooler areas such as the north. And this can hurt local economies in those areas and cause crowding. Heat rises are also associated with death and health risks, which can cost us more too. If we want to keep our economy growing and strong, we will have to change our environmental policies and try and slow global warming as much as possible. We often believe that there is a trade-off between economic prosperity and protecting the environment, but that simply isn't true anymore. Globally, climate change and environmental degradation has already decreased the world GDP by 11%. The price has become too high to ignore anymore. Green initiatives have become predicted to increase GDP, so why wouldn't we make the switch? Now, let's go over to Zoe Grande, Minnesota to see some effects that are happening today. Thank you, Zoe. Hi, I'm Zoe, and I'm here with the new report in Minnesota. And there are already examples of these costs today. In the United States, labor productivity has decreased by 5.6%. And in Minnesota, the use of fertilizers and pesticides has caused huge algae blooms in the state's 10,000 lakes. Drinking water costs have risen from 5 to 10 cents per 1,000 gallons to $4 because of the cost of nitrate removal. And tourism has declined by $1 billion per year due to decreased boating and fishing caused by these algae blooms. The fishing sector has also been hit hard by eutrophication, as it is killing off many fish species in the bodies of water. The loss has been calculated to around $10 million per year. And lastly, home prices on waterfronts have declined, as algae-ridden lakes aren't as beautiful to look at. Climate change is supposed to hit less developed countries even harder, so our detrimental losses in the United States will seem minuscule.
Thank you, Zoe. Security at home could also be jeopardized when climate change is left unchecked. Let's think locally first. Number 1. Marine ecosystems will be devastated and destabilized. Seafood that you eat will either skyrocket in price or simply cease to exist. That salmon that you eat every month with your family won't be there anymore. The rising oceans may flood inland. This is especially dangerous for those of us who live near the coast. There could be more severe weather pattern changes or occurrences. Maybe the sunny California coast will become a little too sunny, leading to worse droughts and the destruction of the beautiful plant life and animal life California is known for. Climate change kills bees as well, which we know is essential for most all plant species. Prices of most all grocery products will increase as a result of the decreased yield in crops. There are tons upon tons of products that rely on our abundance of crops, such as corn syrup, flour, and starch. You get the idea. There are a lot of problems that can lead to new problems and a positive feedback loop. But these issues won't only put a dent in your wallet. The decline in these qualities of life can lead to civil unrest. In the past 50 years, a combination of droughts and political turmoil has caused many civil wars in Africa, events which experts are calling the first war due to climate change. A scientist and philosopher was quoted as saying, "I see climate change as a fundamental driver of conflict in this century." This has been Stephen with APES News.
There are many places in the world that are experiencing conflict over the effects of climate change. Iran expects a 25% decline in surface water runoff by 2030. In the region as a whole, summers are predicted to get hotter by 2 or 3 degrees Celsius at current rates of warming, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Rains are projected to decline by 10%. Its drought prompted a mass migration from country to city and then unemployment among the young. Frustrations built up and street protests broke out. Another example is in Egypt. Egypt has demanded Ethiopia stop construction of a mega dam on the Nile, vowing to protect its historical rights to the river at any cost. The Egyptian authorities have called for a study into whether the project would actually reduce the river's flow. Ethiopia sees the dam as the key to its economic future, but its neighbors to the north fear the dam could spell doom for its water supply. The dam could exacerbate shortages because as the reservoir fills up behind it, the Nile's water level could drop by 25% for up to 7 years. If the two countries don't come to an agreement, military conflict could break out. Another example is with Jordan. Jordan, which has the third lowest reserves in the region, is struggling with an influx of Syrian refugees. The country is undergoing power cuts because of water shortages. In a scenario where greenhouse gas emissions continue at their current pace, Jordan is expected to experience a 1/3 drop in annual winter rainfall, alongside a 4.5 degrees Celsius rise in average temperatures. Jordan today has an average annual water supply of 150 cubic meters per capita. The UN says countries with less than 500 cubic meters per person face absolute scarcity. Seeing these examples, you can see just how much climate change can affect military relations.
Although the ability of a nation to defend itself and the ability of individuals and communities to cover their essential needs well financially, it is just as important for humans to be ensured of natural resources they need to survive. Since practically the beginning of time, environmental degradation has led to problems dealing with economic and military security. Just look at sub-Saharan Africa and their water crisis with the lack of clean water and the water rationing epidemic in Iran. The lack of water is an environmental problem and it's creating wars and hurting communities all over the world. Environmental security is therefore just as important as economic and military security because economic degradation leads to conflict and hurts our economy.